This morning on Today, we begin our exclusive interview with the king of late-night television, Johnny Carson, a man who assumed the Tonight Show crown after Jack Paar and only after much deliberation. Is it true, John, that when you were first approached about doing Tonight on a regular basis, you weren't too crazy about the idea?
I turned it down. I was doing a show on ABC called Who Do You Trust? It went from 3 to 3:30 in the afternoon. It was the second show on the network. And time-wise, people forget in the 50s, television didn't go on until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You're getting up now at, what, 2 in the morning?
Something like that.
To come to work. The shows didn't even start until 3. I think Dick Clark's American Bandstand out of Philadelphia was the first show on the network. There was nothing. There were no morning shows at all. So we started at 3:30 to 4. So I did that for 5 years. And it was very comfortable. It was a comedy interview, you know, with a little gimmick at the end. The gimmick was only there to get people. It was a reason for people to come on and make jokes.
Sure.
And, you know, win a cookie or something, and that was it. So when the initial offer came up to do the Tonight Show, I really was very hesitant. It was comfortable. It was an easy show to do. They were paying me very good money. And I said, why should I, you know, go in and try something else?
What changed that around? Don't tell me money.
No, the challenge. You know, if you like television and you're going to be a performer, then you've got to go to the next step. I did the show similar to what the Tonight Show is on WOW in Omaha in 1949, called The Squirrel's Nest. And all it was a set, a desk, some props, some chairs. And you did interviews, you did comedy, you did anything you could to fill an hour a day. And I did that in the afternoon locally. How
much is the Carson we see on Tonight anything like the Carson who did some of those other shows, like Earn Your Vacation?
Basically the same person. I don't think you change. I think a show like any show that's immediate and spontaneous and live pretty well gives you an impression of what kind of person it is. I don't think you can hide much and change your personality when you step behind the camera. I'm probably more reserved off camera and more private than I am when I'm on.
Were you at all concerned when you started that this was some kind of a watershed for your career, that if this didn't work, then Johnny Carson was in trouble, or if it did, then he was going to go on and become something else?
Yeah, I've often wondered what would have happened when I took over, for example, the Who Do You Trust show I mentioned in 1955 or 56. I was in California. I was out of work. I'd had a show on CBS. It went off the air. This show came up. I had 3 young kids living in California at that time, very small. And somebody said, you want to go to New York and do this game show? I've often wondered what would have happened if that hadn't worked. You know, if I'd have come back here in 13 weeks.
What kind of answers do you give yourself?
I haven't the slightest idea. I don't know what would have happened. I might have turned around and gone back to Omaha.
John, you've got a 21st anniversary show coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever think it would reach that point?
Never. Never.
Why not?
I don't know. Television is such an ephemeral type of thing. I remember the first night standing backstage, and somebody said, well, when this is over, it'll be a week. Then it'll be a year. Then somebody says, 10 years from now, you won't even remember this night. And we all laughed, thinking there's no way anybody's going to do this for 10 years.
Do you remember the night well?
Certainly.
What went well? What didn't?
There was a lot of panic. You know, when you follow Jack Paar, who was a unique personality, mercurial, was in the press all the time, controversial. I realized that there's no way I could follow Jack Paar by trying to emulate Jack Paar. So you have to really go on and do your own show. So you go out with a certain amount of trepidation and say, well, it's going to take a few weeks or a few months to get it settled. And eventually people either like what I do or don't. But you don't go out with any preset concept.
How long did it take to get settled?
I think after 3 or 4 months, I felt comfortable. Get over the initial comparison. There's always that comparison, which you try to remove yourself from.
Were you concerned about the comparison? I mean, were you aware of it?
Yeah, because Jack is a more emotional person than I am. I mean, he wears his heart on his sleeve and would take his personal problems and his controversies right in front of the public, and I don't work that way. So there's that comparison. I didn't want people to expect that's what I was going to do.
If I had known you were going to be this friendly, we would have done the show at my home. And I wish you would all come and see me sometime. You can find me in the phone book. Look me up. We live in New Zealand, and I would love to see you all in New Zealand.
A lot of men would have justifiably wilted under the strain of doing, what is it now, up to about 4,300 shows?
Something like that.
Like that. The constant grind of getting ready for it. Why haven't you? I mean, as you noted one time that Jack Paar did it for 4 years, and what did you say? He wound up talking to a moose in the woods.
Yeah, Jack ran screaming into the woods after 4.5 years. Just different personality. I don't know. I really don't know how to answer that, and I'm not trying to cop out.
As the years go on, have you taken more risks or fewer? What would you say?
I think you go open up a little bit. Yeah, you can talk about things. Remember the early days of movies? You could not say the word pregnant Now, people probably laugh. They say, what are you talking about? Oh, they say, well, she's in a family way. I just saw Jane out here. She's in a family way.
She's in a family way.
She's expecting. Expecting what? You know? Relatives to show up? You couldn't say that. You couldn't say pregnant. That's strange now to think about it.
If I was to say, hey, from 62 to 83, how's the Tonight Show changed? What would you tell me?
I hope that it's gotten better. I think that you asked when we were sitting here, when the camera was off a while ago, how do you get up when your show isn't going particularly well? I think you mature. I think you have different attitudes about things. I think you should. I think the show should get better.
What about your own enthusiasm, John? Is it the same? Well, it can't be the same as it was in 62, but has it remained relatively stable over the years?
I think so. I think what you try to do is to keep from boring people. You don't come out with any master plan that this show is going to be great, because you can't be good every night. So you have to keep that, I think, that little edge. If you don't, then you get bored with the show yourself. The audience is going to get bored. Okay. Jimmy Durante once said, you know, he says, when do you know when to quit? He says, Jimmy says, the audience doesn't show up. They're not there. That's when you quit. He's right. You get up some night, there's nobody in the audience. Or, you know, or you tune in and you're getting beaten by reruns of Beaver or whatever. Then you say, it's time to pack it in and become a sniper or something.
He has worn well over the years.
He sure has. 21 years is extraordinary. I can remember as a teenager when I first discovered the Carson mystique, which was the next morning, people were talking about it. And if you missed it, you weren't part of the conversation. So the next night, you had to be there. And maybe it was one of those nights when Johnny wasn't on, but you didn't want to miss it.
To a certain extent, that's still true. Somebody had noted that he may be the most accurate gauge of the country's political temperament. His monologue may be the most accurate gauge of the country's political temperament that one can find instantly on television on any given night. It's also interesting, I think, that he was so concerned about replacing Jack Paar. And in retrospect now, 21 years hence, how often do you hear Jack Paar's name even mentioned? I mean, it's just kind of like, it's passing, it's done. Yeah, just now you heard it, right? I like the line, too. He ran off talking to a moose in the woods. Anyway, tomorrow, Johnny talks about the people that he's been working with the past 21 years. We'll talk of Ed McMahon, Doc, Freddie DeCordova, a few others. Anyway, that's tomorrow as we continue our exclusive look at Carson. This morning, we continue our exclusive interview with Johnny Carson, the king of late-night television. A king whose reign of 21 years this Monday makes him the most familiar face on the tube.
Here's Johnny.
John, let's talk about some of the people on the show. How would you characterize your relationship with Ed?
Good. Friends. Ed and I, October the 13th, we'll have worked together 25 years. He was with me on Who Do You Trust?
Who Do You Trust, sure.
Then when I went to NBC, I asked him if he'd like to be part of the show. It's a unique relationship in the fact that Ed and I don't socialize greatly when we're off the show. We're together so much on the show. But that's true with a lot of people who work on programs. They don't socially spend a lot of time together. 3 or 4 times a year, maybe at parties, or we'll go out alone sometime. It's a good relationship because we read each other very well. Most of the stuff we do at the desk when we're just fooling around, none of it's usually rehearsed. We'll stumble on something and he'll pick up my mood and either start to put me down or play with it, and that's the way it works.
Do you feel hurt or anger or what when people assail Ed, particularly for his laughing? David Brenner said you can tell you're bombing when you can hear Ed laughing.
I don't think Ed does that at all. It's not conscious. Ed's a fan. He thinks I'm funny, and he laughs. He simply has a raucous laugh, but it's not put there, and I say, Ed, you better laugh at this, or, you know, back to Philadelphia and put the... You're going to be the clown again in the Super Circus. He enjoys the show. He just has one of those laughs, and sometimes it sounds like he's overreacting.
How about you and Doc?
Not as close with Doc. Doc is very private, quiet, off. He's a brilliant musician. Has a strange, bizarre sense of humor when he gets on something that's very funny. Closer to Ed, but I've worked with Ed much longer. But we all have a good relationship on the show, I think.
Let's talk about some of the people we've invited up here.
Yes, I noticed. This is almost embarrassing.
Let's start with the one behind me, Art Fern's Tea Time Movie.
Yeah.
How did it get started?
There was a guy out here years ago in California by the name of, I guess I could use the name, I say here in California, of course we're in New York, by the name of Charles Antel. He was on locally. He sold beauty cosmetics products. This is a mixture of a lot of people in California in the early days. Used car dealers, because in California, for some strange reason I've never been able to understand. People who own automobile agencies have to be on television. I think it's written into the state legislature. If you get an automobile, you must go on television and sell your own cars.
Here at the Gut Hut, don't worry. If you got no credit, got no job, we don't care. Got a bad credit rating, we don't care. Got a prison record, we don't care. Don't expect to pay us, that's when we care. To get to the Gut Hut, you take the Hollywood Freeway, to the Harbor Freeway, to the Long Beach Freeway, drive till you come to Fork in the Road.
It's a composite of a lot of different people. There was a fellow one time out there who did local movies and would come on and sell anything and everything. So it's a composite of all of those people. Just a little seedy, you know, likable, but a lot of con.
Yeah.
A lot of con. It's a rhythm piece, what we call a rhythm piece.
What about the guy over your shoulder, Karnak?
I did that originally, believe it or not. I did a show on CBS locally in 1952. And I saw this device, which is giving the answer or the question and then switching it, written by a fellow by the name of Carl Winston for, I think, Liberty or Collier's Magazine, both now gone. He called it Backward Quiz.
OPEC. OPEC. What does an Irish chicken do?
I took it and we started it in the daytime as Backward Quiz. Now, we just wanted to dress it up a little bit rather than just sitting there and give it some kind of character. Mm-hmm. And we've been using it for years.
Where is she? Aunt Blabby.
That, again, is a composite. I did a thing in WOW in Omaha. In fact, somebody found a sketch of something I did on Carson's Cellar in the early 50s where I was playing, well, you know, men dressing up as women. It's been a staple since Shakespeare was around and before. Charlie's Aunt. My mother used to hate that when she'd see me do that. I guess she felt that, you know, her son was just
Yes. Yeah.
going over the blinds. Says, no, Mother, you see, putting on a dress does not necessarily mean I have personal problems.
Did she come around?
What?
Did she come around
finally,
to-
yeah.
oh, okay.
I don't think she's really ever come around with that.
Florida Turbo.
He just came out of, somebody had written a letter to some paper once, either the Daily News, you know, those letters to the editors, which are so funny. And it was I don't want to say typical, but it was kind of a rube who got everything a little bit out of sync. All American, but for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
There's even news in the morning. My wife gets up and starts watching Jane Pauley and Bryant Gumbel. This deprives me of my God-given right to watch Leave It to Beaver reruns.
Have you a favorite, John? I mean, do you make any effort at all to balance them out over the course of a number of months, or is there one you keep going to because you like it, or
Yeah,
because
you don't want to
works?
overuse them. You know, certain things can be funny, and we've been accused of that occasionally. But when you're on day after day after day, you will go back to maybe. I like the Art Fern character. I don't know why. It's just so silly, and I can race with it. It's a burlesque sketch. Yeah. It's basically what you call a burlesque out-and-out in one type of sketch. So I like that character.
Again, when the cameras were off, you and I were speaking about some other question that had been asked you once, that is, if you could go back in history and have anybody from the start of time on, who would you have? And you had answered Attila the Hun.
Attila
There
the
were a
Hun.
lot of them up there, Galileo and Leonardo.
Not a terrible person. You know, probably misunderstood. He had bad press, Attila. It was a slow news day and pillaging and plundering. I mean, he had to have another nice things. See, you just react when somebody says, I don't know why, and Attila the Hun came out. Now I have to tell you why, and I wasn't quite sure. It just came out.
Tomorrow, as we continue our talk, we'll find out why Johnny hates doing what he's been doing with us all week. He hates doing interviews. As we all know, Johnny Carson is comfortable as an interviewer, but as we continue our exclusive interview with him this morning, we learn that being the interviewee, well, that's another matter.
I don't like to be interviewed, strangely enough. I told you this before the show. I don't know why.
Make you uncomfortable?
Just a little bit, yeah. Because I guess I'm private, and sometimes I think, well, maybe I'm saying things I shouldn't.
For that reason, do you find yourself sometimes saying, no, I'm not going to ask my guest that because I wouldn't want that?
Oh, no, that's different. That's different. The way I treat them is, no, sure. No.
Just do as I say, not as I do?
You got it, you got it. No, whatever will work. I try not to ask questions that I think will embarrass people. I have had people come on and say, hey, don't ask about my marriage. Don't ask about so-and-so. And I respect that. I understand if it's causing them some kind of personal problems, because we've all had our little personal problems along the way. And if somebody says, sets the rule, oh, come on, but I don't want to be asked about so-and-so, you either respect it or you don't have them on. But I don't think it's fair to bring somebody on and then slip a curve and make them look bad. because the show is only what it is. And if the guest looks bad, the show looks bad. You want the guest to be good. You want to get something out of them. And you're not going to get them out if they're sitting there waiting for you to drop a bomb on them. You try to have fun with it.
John, is it fair to say that you leave Johnny Carson at the door and you put on a different person when the band starts?
I don't know. Probably a different appearance only because I'm now performing in a sense. When I walk out, I'm the same person. I'm more outgoing on the air than I am when I'm off the air, from that standpoint. But many entertainers are, and especially those of us who deal in comedy.
Why do you think that is?
Well, there have been volumes written about that, you know, about why comedians are lonely, depressed, rejected, hostile within themselves. I'm not sure all of that is true. It's that old thing, you know, they said, well, you must be suffer, you know. Every comedian used to come from the Lower East Side. And if you weren't beaten with a jackhandle when you were young, you know, and chased by other groups and beaten up regularly, you couldn't be funny. I don't adhere to that philosophy. I don't think it's necessary. I don't know what makes somebody funny at all. I have no idea. It's just the way you look at things.
You just used a number of adjectives that are generally ascribed to you when people talk to you. Does it bother you that people have that opinion of you?
Sometimes. I think the people who know me, my friends, know me. And I can't worry about what other people think. You can't go saying, hey, I want to be Mr. Person. You know, we're brought up as kids to be popular. You know, your mother tells you must be popular. If you go through life just wanting to be popular and people like you, pretty soon you have nothing to say because you want to be all things to all people. You're deferential when you say the right thing at the right time. There are different words for that, you know, agreeable and so forth. I don't think you can do that.
Is that an opinion you've arrived at after years of living with this aura of Johnny Carson, or is that something that was...
No, I'm a shy person. I mean, some may sound strange, but I am inside. I find large groups of people difficult to deal with. If I go in where there are 100 people in a room, I feel very uncomfortable. But I felt that way before I was ever on television, so that's nothing new to me. When you're young, people call that being standoffish or being conceited. They don't understand that you're uncomfortable. So I probably hide a lot of that personally, but that doesn't mean that you're hostile. It's you're cold and Ed McMahon says Carson packs a tight suitcase.
I read that.
I guess that means you keep your emotions and your personal feelings sometimes under check, and that's true.
He said you have difficulty showing your emotions.
Probably, yeah. Probably true. I think I'm better at it now than I was. But I think that's true.
Would you consider yourself a workaholic?
I don't think so. No, not really. Sometimes I feel that I am not working or spending enough time on things. I'm a deadline person. You know, I work under Parkinson's law. Do you know what Parkinson's law is?
Go ahead.
If you have a day to get ready for the show, it takes you a day. If you have a month, it takes you a month. It's true. I'm best when I'm under pressure.
Who makes you laugh? I mean, I know you were a big Jack Benny fan.
Oh, yeah, Jack made me lots of people. Fred Allen make me laugh. I worked for Skelton in the early days. I was a writer on his show. I'm a good audience for comedians because I just like guys who stand up, who get in, as we say, in one, and don't have 20 people dancing behind them. It's a different kind of work when you're standing alone and you got an audience and you have to work that audience and you've got nothing to back you up. That becomes a challenge. I think a lot of the new comedians are funny, make me laugh. Newhart makes me laugh. Carl Reiner makes me laugh. Mel Brooks makes me laugh.
These rags look familiar?
This is right out of the picture, is it
Yes,
not?
Richard Thorndike?
Dr. Richard Thorndike.
Right out of the picture.
You get to keep the wardrobe, too,
I
huh?
take all the things home, everything home. I never make a pirate picture.
All contemporary
You
stuff.
walk at the Scandi with a big thing over your eye. with a big cutlet there.
You wouldn't do it if I asked you to name a favorite.
So I never make
No,
pirate
that's
pictures.
dangerous. If I say I introduce somebody as a favorite one, and I heard them hack it, you know, on the phone. So he's your favorite, huh? I said, that's a mistake. That was a mistake.
Yeah.
So I don't do it anymore. Rick Rickles makes me laugh. Lots of people.
I'm going to circle back to the anniversary, and I want to look a little bit to the future. What happens beyond that? I mean, you're going to play it day by day. What will it take to replace Johnny Carson?
See, anybody's expendable. I mean, I'm not saying that out of any false sense of humility.
Some are less expendable than
I
others.
remember when Paar did the show. Everybody says, nobody can replace Jack Paar. That's true. You know, Paar was Paar. Somebody else will come along and do the show. It happened to be me. If I leave the show, they'll say, all right, nobody can replace Johnny Carson. True to that extent, that they will do the show completely different. differently than I will.
What kind of person might it take to do that show successfully?
I think it takes basically somebody who is a comedian. The ones who've been successful at it, going back to the days of Jerry Lester, Ernie Kovacs, Paar, Steve Allen, have all been basically guys who think funny, I think. You can do a certain amount of writing and make observations about things. They have a comedic mind. I think it takes that.
Next Monday, when we conclude our interview with Johnny Carson, he'll talk of the formula that's made The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson a success for 21 years. This evening, The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, celebrates its 21st birthday. Well, this morning, as we conclude our exclusive interview with the star of that show, Johnny tells us what makes it television's longest-running hit.
Someone who basically doesn't have any facade, who doesn't come on to create some kind of image. For example, I have never been particularly big on booking politicians. We've had some criticism for that, because critics sometimes say, well, The Tonight Show is light, it's frivolous, it doesn't have any great social impact and so forth, and serious things aren't discussed. But that's not what I'm there for. I'm not William Buckley. I'm not David Brinkley. I think The Tonight Show basically is an entertainment show. I'm basically a comedian, a performer. And so politicians, for example, when they come on, I think they find it very difficult. They're there for one reason, either to promote their point of view or to back or not back the administration and create an image. So it's very difficult to get underneath and find the person and lighten them up. I've had a lot of them on over the years. John Lindsay was a wonderful guest, but he was more of a personality. We had Jerry Brown on, who came off very amusingly, believe it or not. Jerry is not a bundle of laughs. But we got him on the show, and he kind of loosened up, and people saw a different side. But it's very difficult to dig that out, because they're there to say, hey, I think we should do this in the government and so forth. So I kind of stay away from that.
Are you cognizant of how intimidating it is to be a guest in your program?
Now, people tell me that, and I don't understand that. I really don't. You were mentioning a while ago when we were talking. You said you were on twice. You were on once with me, and you were on with someone else. Yeah. And you said you were uptight.
It really was, and I don't get nervous. But
see, I don't find myself intimidating. I think what it is, people have seen that show for so many years, whether I was doing it or anybody else. I remember when I went to do the show and replaced Jack Paar, I was intimidated because you'd seen it there. It had become, I don't want to say institution, but it's there all the time. And a lot of people who've come on the show maybe have watched it for years. Yeah. Now all of a sudden they've put themselves in that position.
Ah.
Yeah, here we are, Tonight Show. And you get that reaction. I can see that, but I don't think it has anything to do with me.
You talked of how topical your monologues are, and indeed they are. Somebody once wrote that it was the most accurate political gauge of the most accurate gauge of the country's political thought.
Certain amount
do
of
you
truth
buy
to
that?
Watergate thing is driving everybody crazy. You watch the hearings all day today? It's interesting, I want to tell you. It's affecting everything. My wife wanted to go shopping this morning. I demanded a receipt for the grocery money. I can't comment on Bert Lance anymore. The Bert Lance affair is over, and Lance won't have Percy and a Ribicoff to kick around anymore. President Carter just asked Amy if we should scrap the MX missile system in favor of the stealth bomber. Weird, No, I think David Stockman's going to be all right. He's going to spend 2 weeks at the Earl Butts Home for the Chronically Embarrassed.
So you get kind of a reading. When I started doing early jokes about Ted Agnew, when he was extremely popular, you know, and attacking the college kids and the peaceniks and so forth. He was almost untouchable, because he was expressing, I think, at that time, a lot of unsaid things by middle America, you know. When he kind of found out that he wasn't quite the man that he pretended to be, you could see the audience perception change very quickly. And Agnew joked, and you knew he was in trouble. You could tell when Nixon was in trouble. You could tell when Bert Lance was in trouble.
Are you more politically minded now in your monologue than you were before?
Probably, because they give you so much material. I mean, the government's a great source of comedy material. And what goes on in Washington, you just pick up the papers every day, and you've got something to work from.
You have had so many people on your program over the years, so many important people, so many well-known people. Anybody you've wanted to book and been unable to?
Yeah, a few people.
Who?
Cary Grant. I have a running joke going with Cary Grant. He's a great fan of the show, as I am of him. And I keep saying, Cary, why don't you do the show? And he says, I don't think so. Nobody wants to see an old movie star. He means it. He feels, I think, a little uncomfortable out there. So when we went to the hour show, when we used to do 90 minutes, I had a wonderful idea. We were going to start the hour show about 3 years ago, I think. So I called Cary Grant, and I said, Cary, I think I've got it for you. Here's what we do. I introduce you the last minute of the show. I say, my guest is Cary Grant. You walk out and you sit down. I say, Cary, how are you? And you say, it's wonderful to be here. And I'll ask you a question and say, I'm sorry, Cary, we're out of time. I didn't realize we had the hour format, but thank you for coming. I said, now that's got to do it. So I called him. He said, now what's that again? I just say what? And he entertained that for about 3 days and then bailed out.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the workings of the program.
Yeah, I'd like to know how that works, too.
If I asked you to define for me the qualities that make a good Tonight Show writer, what would you tell me?
Inhibition, certain amount of intelligence, currently knowing what is, having that offbeat mind, creative, seeing the ridiculous in the ordinary, that type of thing, being able to form mental word pictures. I have very good writers on the show.
How important is it that he do Johnny Carson humor, or can he just be funny?
Well, I think you write in a way for the type of things that I do. I like topical things. I like to comment on what's going on in the country. I like to touch on everyday things, but you look at them in a different perspective. The trouble is when you start to discuss comedy, it becomes awfully dull. George Burns once said, what's funny? He says, if you laugh at it, it's funny. It's as good as it can be described. What's funny to you may not be funny to me. It's all relative.
One final note about the conversation with Johnny. Asked Johnny, assuming that he can see his last show coming and know it will be his last, who might he have on? He said, a guest host. Well, there'll be no guest host tonight. Johnny's 2-hour special, his 21st anniversary show, goes on NBC tonight, 9 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Central.
Hey, thanks for watching. And don't forget, you can catch the Today Show every morning on NBC or take Today when you're on the go. Just follow the Today podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.